What's happening, everyone? The Australian Open 2022 is off and running. We saw the first day of action, and along with the Australian Open, we're hearing a lot of amazing and awful Australian accents, impersonations of Australian accents. But before we get started, I'm going to teach you how to nail the Australian accent. Kenny, I need you to just repeat these three words. Repeat them after me. Ready? Rise.
Rise.
Up.
Up.
Lights.
Lights.
Kenny, what did you shave with this morning?
Rise up lights.
That you did, sir. That you did.
Light.
Rise up lights.
Rise up lights.
Nailed it. All right, so let's jump into the action today. We have, believe it or not, before the Australian Open, we saw some action that finalized. We had Adelaide and we had the Sydney Classic that wrapped up on Saturday. But today we're going to talk about the highlights. We're going to talk about the lowlights, some upsets, day one, some upsets. So let's jump right into it. Highlights. Let's talk about Madison Keys. This is her tweet, just vibes. She's feeling it. She took down Allison Risk convincingly, 1-2, I believe. And then so she finishes that on Saturday, rolls right into the first round of the Australian Open and upsets the number 11 seed and former Australian champion, Sofia Kenin. Not real sure what's happening with Kenin. She's been struggling with the game. You know, expectations, right? Comes out, wins a Grand Slam early. I think managing those expectations, that's where she currently is at. But Madison Keys doing some really big things, playing some phenomenal tennis. So she's going to be one to watch for the remainder of the next couple weeks. Also over the weekend, we saw Aslan Karatsev defeated Andy Murray 6-3, 6-3. Survived a 5-set thriller in the first round, but that had to be tough playing the final of a tournament and then rolling right into the Australian Open. We're going to talk more about kind of the players' schedules and these expectations in a moment, but let's continue with the update. And speaking of Andy Murray, who lost in the final against Karatsev, he's in form and he's looking good and he's telling everyone he's feeling good. But so why is this relevant? We see Basilashvili on the right over here. Well, Andy Murray had an absolute thriller against him in the semis of Sydney. And guess who he drew first round at the Australian Open? Basilashvili. And now we're in the best of five. Some fitness is going to come into play. But that is the World Tour. 1 week, you're just barely surviving someone in the semis, and now next week you're playing them in the first round. So buckle up. I think that's going to be a big one. That match in Sydney had definitely some fireworks involved. All right, so moving on, this is definitely a highlight and a low light. Now, huge upset, kinda, right? Cameron Norrie was the higher seed. Norrie's had a phenomenal 2021 season. But man, Sebastian Korda has been bursting on the scene for a long time. And I've been talking a lot about this. The tour is so deep on the ATP. I mean, WTA's, anyone can win any given week. But on the ATP now, every round there's a threat. There's no easy wins coming. And Sebastian Korda, no one wanted him in the first round. Now, Norrie said he played some pretty flat tennis. Didn't feel great on the court. Ironically, Sebastian Korda, who had COVID, was basically shut down upon arrival in Australia. So he didn't play any of the warm-ups. Found his form. So a highlight for Mr. Korda, low light for Norrie as we see him lose in the first round. And man, a lot of hope for this guy, Thanasis Kokkinakis. That's a tough one. He actually won the tournament in Adelaide. Adelaide 2 had the reemergence. Everybody's talking about how well he's playing. And then, unfortunately, goes out in the very first round at the Australian in really abysmal fashion, 6-1, 6-2, 7-6. So here's the tough part is, what do you do as these players? You know, we see Madison Keys play Adelaide, or I'm sorry, the Sydney Classic, it was Adelaide 2. And she comes through victorious, but she gets a really easy win over Risk in the final, and she comes in super hot in the first round, upsetting Kenin. But then Kokkinakis, who really had to fight. I mean, a lot of his wins working through winning Adelaide, he had a lot of tough matches. And then you just see a very tired, very burned out looking Thanasis Kokkinakis. So this is the grind of the tour, and these are the decisions, right? Like, are you looking to get warmed up And that's why sometimes we see some of the top players skipping the tournaments because they don't want to get worn out. They're not necessarily worried about the warm-up per se. But let's just talk about that for a minute because I think that is the big disparity between what we see in the top 20, maybe the top, I think you could go to maybe the top 30, and then everybody else. So if you're living in the top 30 of the ATP, you have the luxury to where you're not always having to defend points. You can really work through your schedule and kind of decide with periodization. So periodization is you're trying to get peak performance for these big tournaments. Now, if you're a journeyman, where Kokkinakis has been, you're just trying to get your feel, you're trying to get some experience, you're trying to get match play tough. So you're trying to play in these tournaments. And you obviously aren't going to skip the Australian Open, big payday for the guy. And you don't get a lot of opportunities to play the Grand Slams. So it's always this battle between, are you rested or are you, not playing enough? And that's the grind. And it's only going to get more difficult on the ATP with so many young up-and-comers that are going to be a threat. Alcaraz, who drew that dude in the first round? Good luck. Don't want him in the first round. So sad to see him go down in the first round, but it does look like his trajectory is moving upward. So maybe the biggest disappointment, sad to say, Coco Gauff lost to Qian Wang 6-4, 6-2, and to be honest, it was not even that close. Gauff really just a ton of unforced errors, spraying the ball, just going for shots and not making a ton of them. And it's disappointing because she's been in such good form. It's a surprise loss in the first round. But that is the grind of the tour. Trying to treat every match exactly the same and living up to expectations, coming off a hot week, and then trying to keep that momentum. And I think what it does is really shines light on how magnificent the achievements are from the top of the game, ATP and WTA. We got the big three, and you've also, you take a look at the Bardys and whatnot on the WTA that have been doing this and sustaining a high level of play for quite some time now. Now, the question will be is, can they get through the rest of the Australian with keeping that momentum? You want to put your money on the experienced one. Nadal looked completely convincing against Karan in the first round, as did Barty. I think Owen maybe dropped a game in her first round. But I think there's a whole lot more upsets to come. We will find out as the Australian Open progresses. The men's side, wide open. We didn't talk about Novak, but we know he's not playing. So can Rafa move ahead in that race for the Grand Slam titles, or will it be somebody entirely new? We don't know. Guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's vid, hit that like, hit subscribe, and I'll be back next week to wrap up the finale and to give you all the news surrounding the Australian Open. Thanks for watching.